Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans dripped in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channels and on X. We are finally talking about a series win again for the New York Mets, as the Mets did win 9-2 yesterday. 6 home runs, just a really, really good performance, clutch hitting. Some guys came back from the dead offensively and got the Mets the victory. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm doing very, very well. This team is figuring it out. Really both sides of the ball, especially with Clay Holmes. I mean, he had a brilliant outing as well. 6+ innings from Clay Holmes. We haven't really seen that, if I'm not mistaken, since the early parts of June. It was a fantastic performance and a much needed one as well. And this offense, I understand it's against the mid Braves pitching. They have been, just battered with injuries. I understand that. But the aggressiveness of this lineup has been such a joy to watch for quite some time now. Yeah, they got a little bit cold in that national series, but for a couple of weeks now, Rob, I feel like we're seeing a lot more consistent offense, and that's exactly what we were waiting for all season long. Hopefully the pitching can start to build some momentum, especially with the energy of Nolan McLean and what he's bringing. David Peterson, he's on the mound today. He had a brilliant last outing in Washington, going 8 innings, and just hopefully we have some more big news coming soon, because I feel like it's Sprout season, and Sprout season could be on the way very shortly. But we do have to talk about that as well, because Brandon Sprout is actually coming out of the bullpen in Syracuse. I believe it's today, if I'm not mistaken, and they're trying to get him acclimated to that situation. So a lot of moving parts moving forward here in the later stages of August, moving into the month of September.
Yeah, I did a short about an hour ago in regards to Brandon Sproat coming out of the not pitching today, starting today, which he was supposed to, and Austin Warren is replacing him. And what I didn't know until right after I finished the short was they're putting him in the bullpen as a possible, long man type of, I guess, to save his innings, because I think they're worried about his innings more than Tong and McLean. So I think that's why they're putting him possibly in the bullpen if he does come up, and it's probably going to be shortly. I'm assuming it's going to either be Stanek DFA'd or Brazaban going back down to put Sproat in there at some point. And I'm assuming it's probably going to be tomorrow for the Phillies series, just getting him ready to go, or sometime during the Phillies series, just to see how he acclimates back into the bullpen. And that just leads to Jonah Tong, as the script has flipped from what we thought the Mets were going to do, right? It was going to be Nolan McLean, right? They felt very confident in him and his demeanor and his poise on the mound. And it was all about who's next, Brandon Sproat, right? That was the conversation. Those were the reports that Tong wasn't even an option, because it was only his second time yesterday in AAA pitching. So I don't know if the Mets were really thinking about that until probably a couple days ago, as they did a total 180. As they decided to put Sproat in the possibility of a bullpen, and now Jonah Tong could be up here any day with this team, and he probably will pitch Friday or Saturday of the week, which will probably be in the Miami series at home, Chris. So, this is exciting news for Mets fans because not only it's not about just the prospects, it's not about the prospects coming up. It is about the help that we need in this rotation, especially when we got Minaya and Senga going the next 2 days at home against Philadelphia. We have no idea what we're going to get from them. And we need guys like McLean. We need Peterson, who's pitching today. And we're probably going to need Tong doing what they have been doing in the minors and at the big league level in Peterson's case to get the job done, Chris. And that's why it's exciting, because we need the help. And the urgency finally seems to be there from the organization, from the top. And the team looks like, and the way Mendoza's managing, the urgency seems to be there now. And that's a good sign 33 games ago.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I do think that David Stearns' hand was definitely forced, especially with the way things were playing out. I don't know. I mean, did he really expect Nolan McLean to be here this early? Probably earlier than he really wanted to. I don't really think so. But again, his hand was forced. Now, Patrick is saying basically Stearns needs to save his job. That's the 180. I don't think, no matter how this season played out, that David Stearns' job was on the line. I just don't believe that, especially when the Mets and Steve Cohen have been waiting for David Stearns for so long, leading up to his hiring. But his hand was forced, right? That would be a very bad look if he just didn't get any pitching help. The premier cream of the crop pitching in the offseason, and also no trades at the deadline for any impactful arms, and also didn't bring up the prospects. Like, you can't go 3 for 3 and failing to do that. So David Stearns, the urgency, I think that's the best word, not only from the players, because I did have some concerns watching the Mets live in person in that Nationals series, especially when they were down in games 2 and 3. The urgency just didn't seem to be there watching that team in person. So I was curious how they were going to respond in this Braves series, and they responded in a very major way, which is nice to see. But not only from the players, the front office and David Stearns really getting a sense and having a feel for this season is going to get ugly very quickly, and you're going to lose a playoff spot from the Cincinnati Reds very quickly if you don't make these moves for these prospects. And he did, and we're starting to see the benefits of young, fresh arms coming up and helping out these veterans in the rotation that simply just haven't had it over the past couple of weeks or even months. So I think it's interesting to have Brandon Sproat come up and, maybe test that bullpen idea out. It makes sense, and I understand it. But at that point, personally speaking, I'd rather just have Brandon Sproat start and then move Clay Holmes into the bullpen. I would rather that happen. But if I get, Sproat in the bullpen versus nothing, of course I want Brandon Sproat on this team. So I'll take that at the very minimum. But I also wouldn't discount him getting a couple starts down the stretch, especially in September, if the other pitchers don't get it together.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think Mendoza pushed Clay Holmes because I think they were on the brink of putting him in the bullpen, to be quite honest with you. I think if he would have failed, because we saw that 4th inning, he walked 2 guys, right? It got a little bit closer. It was 3-2 at that point now. And it looked like Clay Holmes was going to be done maybe in the 5th inning. That's what it seemed like. They were going to take him out. And all of a sudden, it just seemed like Mendoza had like a epiphany or something like that, where he's like, I'm gonna try Clay Holmes here. I think they were having conversations and they already knew they were gonna do this with Sproat. I think Sproat already knew that he was probably gonna get switched to the bullpen. Nobody knew until today, but I think it was obviously a plan. I truly think that yesterday's forceful decision to let Clay Holmes go past the 5th and into the 7th, I thought was hey, you want this rotation? You want to be in this rotation? Then you better show us, because you're going to go into the bullpen because we need you in the bullpen with Stanek not pitching well, with Brazaban, you not know where you're going to get. And I think they made the decision when Holmes looked like he can do it and still went strong. Obviously, he gave up that, he got the 1 out, and then he gave up the hard line drive in the 7th inning. He looked really good. He looked strong. He looked like he was able to get through adversity, which we haven't seen. And he was always coming out in the 5th inning. Because of that, it was nice to see. And I think the Mets made up their mind in saying Clay Holmes is going into staying in this rotation. I think yesterday was a big decision for Clay Holmes, and he had to show something as why I think they pushed him, Chris. Now, maybe I'm just thinking outside the box here, and it's not what they were thinking, but it was just weird how all of a sudden against the Braves, that, and it does help that the Mets did score more runs and give them insurance runs. I think that made a decision a little bit easier. But I wonder if that was the case. Like, they were going to bring up Brandon Sproat probably sometime after Tom, in my opinion. I think Tom was going to come up first, but it just made sense. Now, I agree with you, Chris. I don't understand why don't they just put him in the rotation and throw Clay Holmes in the bullpen no matter what, because you didn't get his start today. You know, you could have pitched him today, and you could have pushed back Peterson, and everybody would have had an extra day off, as we're going to talk about right now, as people are talking about it in the chat, and I brought it up in the postgame yesterday. All our pitchers the next 5 days, including Peterson today, are all going on normal rest, 4 days off and pitching on the 5th day. So I'm a little surprised they didn't call up Brandon Sproat earlier to pitch him today, so you can give everybody the extra day off and have Peterson start the series against the Phillies, except for Senga. So it is an interesting decision. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they should have done it that way, or it's like, it is what it is, let's get it done?
Well, maybe this is the point of the season that Stearns and Mendoza are collaborating and saying, hey, listen, now we're getting into September and now we're going to just start implementing this regular rest for the pitchers. Like, I don't know. Like, was this the plan all along, to find an off day in the later stages of August and have these guys pitch on regular rest? I'm very nervous about that because it's not like we've been seeing a great version of Kodai Senga already. But, if you have him on regular rest, that becomes even more so of a concern. I don't really know what the actual plan was. Maybe it was just hesitancy from David Stearns. Maybe this wasn't the plan all along, and he's just kind of backtracking now, and it is what it is. I have no idea. But the important conversation surrounding this too is that I don't know if you talked about it. Did you do a post game yesterday?
Yeah, I did.
I didn't get a chance to. I was out. I'm sorry I couldn't be a part of it, but I didn't get a chance to see. I'm not sure if you talked about it, but the Frankie Montas injury news, for me, came out of left field. I had no idea that was even a thing. I think a lot of Mets fans are saying the same thing and are thinking the same thing. I had no idea, but that opened the door wide open for this move or potential incoming move for Brandon Sproat to join this team, especially in the bullpen. And I said it in the chat here in live on YouTube in the live chat that I all along, and maybe even still, have some reservations about thinking the Mets and David Stearns are going to rush Jonah Tong and call him up this season. But I'm starting to get a little bit more confident in that because there is another guy that is a clear DFA candidate. And you just mentioned his name, Ryan Stanek. Yeah. You bring Jonah Tong up, whether you want to utilize him in the bullpen or the starting rotation. I think it'd be a really big mistake not to utilize him as a starter. But if they don't want to, you have another just clear path to bring him up and make roster space for him and just letting Ryan Stanek go. I'm sorry, Ryan Stanek has had plenty of opportunities to get it right, and he simply hasn't. He's shown, I guess, stretches this season and spurts that he could be a competent pitcher in this bullpen. But all in all, does anybody trust Ryan Stanek right now? No. I need guys that I can trust, and I'm sure Mendoza is thinking the same thing. And maybe he's even telling Stearns, like, listen, I can't do this with Stanek anymore. There's no situation that I can trust him in. The same thing with Montas before the injury news, right? And so maybe there's some internal pressure coming up from Mendoza and saying, we need fresh arms here. We need impactful arms. And maybe that will drive the decision for David Stearns. I don't know what it is. I think we all need to see these three kids up, the three-headed monster, and Sproat, Tong, and McLean. That would be absolutely electric. And, again, if McLean is doing what he's doing so far, right, in the first two starts of his career, 12 and a third innings pitched, right? If I'm not mistaken, 15 strikeouts, just absolutely unbelievable numbers. Then if he's doing it, I'm pretty sure Brandon Sproat, maybe to a lesser effect, can replicate that same thing. And Jonah Tong, for sure, who is considered the most talented of the three anyways. Jonah Tong is considered probably one of the best, if not the best, pitching prospect in all of baseball right now. Yeah, he's going to provide something similar to what McLean has already provided. So I understand that the innings limit is a concern. Maybe they're more concerned about the innings, like you just said, from Brandon Sproat rather than the other two. I don't know what it is, but get these guys up here and let's rock and roll because the impact that they're going to have is insane.
Yeah, and David just brought it up. Yeah, I didn't believe in bringing up all three pitches because I was concerned about the restrictions they were going to put on them, and I was worried about that. That's why it wouldn't make sense to put restrictions on them, because why pitch them only 5 innings and watch their innings if you're having the same problems going deep into games. That's not going to solve a problem. And now that they're clearly not worried about that, especially with Nolan McLean, now we'll see what they'll do with Tong. And obviously Sproat, they're probably concerned about innings, in my opinion. That's why they're throwing him in the bullpen. And again, I think Ryan Helsley being a problem is another reason why I think Brandon Sproat's probably going to go to the bullpen. They need somebody. And maybe Sproat will be that guy. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think Tong would be Sproat would be the guy to I would say probably get a chance to be in the Ryan Helsley role, in my opinion, only because I think they're worried about his innings. And, for whatever reason, like we don't know, but because the restrictions are kind of thrown out the window, at least with McLean. And I'm assuming, Tom, you're not going to throw him in the rotation and throw him 5 innings. You're going to make him go as long as he can, right? They pitched 6, 7 innings. He just threw, 6 innings yesterday, 6 1/3. These guys throw constantly 6, 7 innings, 90 to 95 pitches. They can do it. That's why when it's like, well, they can do it in the minors. Why can't they do it at the big league level to help us? Now that I see what they're doing with Nolan McLean and they're allowing him to go, I'm all on board now. I was just worried about the restrictions. It wasn't about bringing the guys up. I wanted them up in June. We talked about this many times. June was the month.
Yeah.
And so,
on the other point there too, like I was fully convinced that if these prospects were going to be coming up, that they wouldn't be on any limitations, because there's no way that you can manage both sides and still get to where you want to go. You have to let them go. So I'm really happy to see that they're doing that with Nolan McLean thus far. And I do think that if, the other two guys do come up, it'll be the same thing. The one other thing that is involved with all of this too is the struggles of Ryan Helsley and maybe a potential bullpen change to get more of a successful arm in that 8th inning, which is why the Mets got Helsley in the first place, because Stanek couldn't do it. A lot of this bullpen leading up to Edwin Diaz couldn't do it. Reed Garrett couldn't do it. So they got Ryan Helsley. They didn't expect Ryan Helsley to be an issue and be a problem that he's been so far with the lack of performance. So, I think that they'll be ultra aggressive. If they need to demote Ryan Helsley sooner rather than later, I think that starting maybe in early September, you can see a guy like Clay Holmes back in the bullpen to be that 8th inning guy if you need it, right? I don't think that they will hesitate to do that whatsoever. I know that there's a lot of fans and Mets fans, based off of what Stearns has said and Mendoza has said about Clay Holmes being in this rotation. I don't think that he is not an option to go to the bullpen. That's how I'll state it. Like, if they need him to go to the bullpen, they will do it, just like we saw David Peterson do so down the stretch of the playoffs last season. Any combination to help this team win games, I think this front office and David Stearns is going to make that call, and they're going to do it. And if that means Clay Holmes is not in the rotation, even though he's had a very successful year so far, with the numbers alone, I know that he hasn't been the most efficient at times. He hasn't provided the most length at times. But if you look at the overall numbers in year 1 as a starting pitcher, right, being a starting pitcher again since the first year of his career in Pittsburgh, this has been a successful season from Clay Holmes. And you can build off of that already, given what you've seen up until August. And I just don't think that there's any reason, right? There's no cons to not moving Holmes back into the bullpen if you need a lockdown 8th inning guy, because then that paves the way for a guy like either Sproat or Tong to come up and take his spot very easily. So I don't know. I think that we will start seeing a lot of different combinations if necessary, if Ryan Helsley can't get it together, because you can't have him out there blowing leads and doing what he's doing right in front of Edwin Diaz. He's supposed to be locked down to get it to Edwin Diaz and win ball games. So that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, and a similar situation. I mean, it's a little different, but like what the Yankees did with Devin Williams, right? They made him the closer, right? They got him because they wanted him to be the closer, let Weaver be the setup man, and Williams couldn't do it. And what did they do? They put him in low level situations like the 6th inning, maybe the 5th inning if the starter comes out in the 5th. Throw Helsley in there in a lower leverage situation to get him right, because the problem with him right now is that the slider is getting demolished. And that's the biggest problem. And his fastball is not playing because that they were just waiting for that hanging slider that he seems to be throwing every time he comes out. And I think that's the problem. Like, you can get him right or try to get him right by getting them in lower level situations. And you know what? Move people up, right? Rogers has pitched a little bit better since, not pitching well, but he's been given a lot of soft contact for the most part. So, and he was good yesterday, right? Push him up. What about Gregory Soto? Why are we continuing to bring Gregory Soto in the 5th or 6th inning? Put him in the 8th inning. The guy has been lights out for us. He was the high risk addition. Rogers and Helsley were supposed to be the obvious choices and the obvious additions. Gregory Soto was a high risk, right? Considering the fact that he has walk issues, location issues, he's been the best out of the bunch. Why not throw him in a higher leverage? Put him in the 8th inning, let him be the setup man to Diaz. I don't see why. He's pitching really well, right? He's getting righties out, he's getting lefties out. That's the way they should do it. Push it. You want to put Rogers in the 7th inning? I'm all on board. With Reed Garrett struggling a little bit, there should be no reason why Helsley and Garrett shouldn't be pitching the 5th or 6th inning if needed. And that's what they should do, right? Rogers got a rubber arm. He can pitch basically almost every day. So you're not worried about him throwing him at any moment. Like, he can pitch today, even though he pitched 2 innings yesterday. He'll be fine. But I think they got to switch it around a little bit. And I do think Brandon Sproat is a possibility as well. So you can push more guys down. And it just makes sense. But again, they're making uncomfortable moves. Remember how I said that? Uncomfortable moves at the for deadline additions. You got to be uncomfortable at the deadline, or you're not going to do what you need to do to fill every hole you need. This is an uncomfortable roster situation where you're making decisions that he probably is not comfortable making. I think he was forced to do so because of the lack of performances that this guy in David Stearns brought in. And he's got to make those moves now. And you know what? I like it. You know what? Even if it's panic mode, it is what it is. It's a sense of urgency that we've all been asking for more than a month now. And it's good to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, I think that, David Stearns is the type of guy to have a plan and stick to that plan as long as possible, as long as he can, until his hand is forced. And we're starting to see that right now with exactly what you and I in the chat have been saying here for the past couple of minutes. Absolutely. I had a question for you because I saw this also, I also think that Tyler McGill is kind of like an organizational favorite, and he's also going to be coming up. He's doing his rehab starts, whatever. I think it's a lock for them to bring him up. Is anyone confident in him moving forward at the major league level? No. Like,
as a starter, though, I'm not mad because that's why I think it was the decision. Do you want Sproat to be the 6th man, or do you want McGill to be the 6th man? One of them's going in the bullpen, right? It's stupid not to have both of them on the roster. I think the veteran situation with McGill, and we've seen this with Stearns many times, he's going to go with the veteran. Even though Sproat probably has a bigger upside, I think McGill's going to be the 6th starter.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. And then you can just have Brandon Sproat, like, Peter saying, just going right after McGill, in case it's not, a 6th inning performance, whatever. But that also, if we're talking about McGill and Sproat, that puts a damper on the idea of Tong, though, because who would be the residual move and the corresponding move to get rid of to make room for Tong at that point from the pitching side of things?
Isn't it with Tong? It's going to be a 6th starter with McGill, or am I missing somebody? Right, because we got
rosters. Well, I guess rosters expand in September, so I guess there'll be automatically a spot anyway. So you're okay. So maybe Tong is the September call up, is what we're saying here.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, because like with that, because you can bring up one more pitcher and one more position player. In
Got
September.
it. Okay. Yeah. So maybe they use that on Tong. So maybe you'll have enough roster spots to get all 3 of these guys, Sproat, Tong, and McGill back, and not have to make a corresponding move. So yeah, I was just thinking about if they wanted to make the move for Tong before September, then they would need to make a residual move. But it would just make sense, especially with how recently Tong got promoted to AAA, to just wait until September gets here, maybe get him one more start in AAA. I don't know. That makes sense to me now. So no, and I agree with you. You're spot on about Gregory Soto. He's been absolutely lights out for the New York Mets, and that's exactly what they've needed from the left-handed side. And he's just been electric. And if you told me that he'd be better than Helsley for the New York Mets on the stretch so far, I wouldn't believe you. I'm just holding out hope that Ryan Helsley figures it out. I'm sure his confidence is wavering a little bit, but we're going to need him in a big way, and that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. You can bury him for a little while, but you're going to need him. Like, I don't think you're going to go very far without Helsley being a part of this bullpen and being good in this bullpen. I want to get to the lineup because before we get to actual lineup today, what about Starlin Marte, right? There's been a lot of talk about Marte being, DFA'd at times and not being a part of this, instead of being just the rah-rah guy on the bench, he's been a very important player for our team, with the Nimmo injury, with just being one of the best hitters in the lineup since he's come back from injury. It's been outstanding. And that throw he made, I couldn't tweet it fast enough. If Brandon Nimmo was in left field, that run would have scored with ease. Because it was a bang-bang play, even with Marte's arm. Nimmo would have thrown it to third. The run would have scored, and who knows what would have happened in that inning if it is gonna keep on continuing. Because Marte has been outstanding, and again, with so many guys hitting right now, somebody's gonna be sitting on the bench. Ronnie Mauricio's getting an opportunity. I'm not very excited about that because Beatty's hitting, Viento's hitting, Marte's hitting. You could have found a way to play all these guys, but it is what it is. Mauricio's in there at third base. We'll see what happens, but I'm even amazed, and I'm a Marte fan, right? I've been on the Marte bandwagon since last year. The guy just is a clutch player. Like, I know he's 36 years old. You can't play him every day in the outfield. I understand that. He can DH, but with Vientos surging a little bit more, you can't play Marte every day. But it's hard not to get Marte's bat in that lineup. And it's just amazing what he's doing. And, it's not just about his what he means to the clubhouse. It's what he does on the field, that he still comes through at 36 years old. It's kind of amazing. Even I'm shocked. And I actually really like Marte, and we talked about it last year in the playoffs, or even before the playoffs. It is amazing what he's done, and he just continues late in the season to always find a way to be in the mix, to doing something positive for this team, and it is amazing with Marte.
We even had these conversations as recent as the beginning of this season, maybe even the offseason, where we were talking about Starling Marte's roster spot and the Mets being reportedly, in the market, especially in talks with Kansas City, to move him over there potentially for a reliever. He is a just true professional baseball player, and it's unfortunate to see all the injuries that he's sustained in the past couple of seasons that has, forced him to sit out a handful of games. But this guy's batting just shy of 400, right? In the last 2 weeks, he's batting 430 in the last week alone, and he is probably the hottest bat on the team right now. I mean, it's a team full of hot bats. Brett Beatty, same thing. He's killing it this month. Francisco Lindor is having himself a pretty decent month as well. Good. It's just good to see these bats coming around. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know if I would want to see it, but I would not be shocked if the Mets brought him back for another year in some sort of capacity.
I'd be okay with that. As a bench guy,
he's a bench guy,
do it, right? We didn't think he could do it, right? We thought, it was going to be and even the broadcast talked about it earlier in the season, that they don't believe, they were not sure what Marte can bring as a utility or as a bench guy. And he fits into that role because he's still got enough speed to play the outfield every now and then. And he's a good bat off the bench. And, it's a guy like that, I don't know, he's just still a good professional. And those guys are hard to come by. Like Jose Iglesias is a good professional. That was the big reason why he did so well at the Mets, because he was just a professional ball player. He's not the best player in the world. But when he got a professional veteran as a bench guy or on this team, it can do huge things for you. And it's showing in Marte's sense right now.
Well, so Marte, I'm seeing he's getting the day off here. He's not playing today. My thing is with the defensive alignment, we've seen a handful of games of Starling Marte in the outfield, right? I mean, he was kind of forced to come into the outfield when Nimmo was removed in Washington. And you just were talking about one of the defensive plays as well. I mean, you have an outfield that lacks arm strength, especially with Mullins getting starts over Tyrone Taylor on a handful of occasions. If you have Mullins and Nimmo patrolling center and left field respectively, you're not throwing anybody out. Yeah. You're not throwing anybody out. Those are like really, really weak arms from both of them. And so I'm curious if, they've just been playing it very conservatively with Marte to get him in a spot where he can contribute more defensively down the stretch of this season, to have that arm in the outfield alongside Juan Soto, who has an average arm. It's not subpar from Juan Soto in right field, but it's also not the best arm in the world. I think that Marte could pay dividends. But then you run the risk of injury and just taking his bat out of the equation for quite some time, moving towards the playoffs. And it's kind of like, what do you do and what sort of decision that you make there? But I'm just telling you this right now, defensively, if you have Mullins and Nimmo out there, I'm not confident that they throw anybody out. So that's something that I'm also actively thinking about from a managerial perspective if I'm Carlos Mendoza.
Yeah, you could really think about Tyrone Taylor and Marte playing center and left in defensive replacement situations late in games, considering the fact that, if you're winning the ball game, do you really want a noodle arm of Brandon Nimmo and Cedric Mullins? You could put Tyrone in center and Marte in left for 2-3 innings. I mean, that's good. You keep, you bring Marte's bat into the lineup, and Marte is a better defender than Brandon Nimmo. I'm sorry to say that, but Brandon Nimmo scares the hell out of me when he plays left field. Like, he just doesn't look comfortable going for balls. I never liked him going back on baseballs, especially in center field. Now in left field, I don't trust him throwing anybody out. And, if you're in a close game, if you're in a 3-2 game and there's a guy on second base, I don't want a base hit to Brandon Nimmo. I just don't, because he ain't throwing him out. He's not throwing him out. And I'd rather have Marte play left field late in the game. Maybe that's an option going forward. Right? You saw Tyrone Taylor making that great catch against Michael Harris late in the game yesterday. That ball was, ready to just hit that grass and possibly go into the gap. And Tyrone Taylor made an exceptional catch that I don't think a lot of people thought he could have made, just the way the ball trajectory was. But that might be an option, Chris. Marte coming in for defensive replacement late in games. If we have a lead, you put Marte in left, Tyrone Taylor replacing Mullins in center. Now you got a really good defense, and Marte's still got enough speed to play that left field position. And we know about the arm. You get Tyrone Taylor's arm out there and his glove, and you get Marte's arm out there in left field, which I think would be huge in a close game, depending on, late in games, play Marte 2-3 innings. And you also have his bat in the lineup later in the game if it does come up again. So that's a good, plan to have, or at least, extra guys that you can trust in those spots, because there wasn't even a thought Marte coming in for defensive purposes for anybody, during this season. And it's becoming, a hot topic now, because you see how much better guys are in left field when Nimmo's not playing. Like, it's a huge difference. Guys, look, you're going to see runners get held up now. If Nimmo's not playing in left field, it's a huge difference. And, I really, this might be crazy to think, and I know this is off-season talk, but there might be a conversation to be had where the Mets might try to move Nimmo this season, especially with Ryan Clifford being on the fast track as well. Could be a strong possibility that Nimmo might be, they might look to move Nimmo somehow, some way. And I don't know if they're going to eat all the contract, but just to get him off this team, because again, we talked about this core. At some point, would you rather have Pete Alonso longer term over the next 5 years or Brandon Nimmo? I think that's an easy choice. And and I'm not the biggest Pete Alonso fan, but that's kind of, a stupid decision if I say Brandon Nimmo. That could be an option, especially, getting some of that money off the books. You got money to Pete Alonso, it kind of, solves an issue there in that hole in left field, because Nimmo is a hole in left field. Every year he has 2 hot months, and the rest of the year he's just nowhere to be found. And you can't keep on having that. And with him with his neck and all these other injuries he's dealing with, he's getting older. It might be time, Chris. It might be time.
I mean, good luck to David Stearns trying to facilitate that. I mean, like, 5 years left on his deal. I don't even know what the valuation is in terms of the total money. That is a hefty contract to even try to move, but it would make sense. I mean, I don't know what you do with Brandon Nimmo moving forward long term. Like, that is shaping up to be a really bad situation for the New York Mets, unfortunately, because, I mean, Brandon Nimmo is a great guy. Nobody's disputing that. But, like, if you can't stay healthy, he's hobbling around in the outfield. He doesn't have a great arm. The bat, which was one thing that we always look forward to with Brandon Nimmo, even given some of the defensive struggles, that's not there anymore on a consistent basis. So, like, really, what do you do? And I mean, maybe they'll discuss it, but I just don't see how. I don't see them eating. Like, I'm sure they'll do whatever it takes to eat the contract valuation down if a team is willing to take him for some value in return. But I don't see them doing like a buyout situation. It's
Yeah,
not feasible with 5 years
yeah.
left. So I don't know. I don't know.
You know what? You know what's interesting? Like, because, like, let's just say Vientos starts to continue what he's doing over the next month and a half. 30-something games, and and Beatty's been doing the same thing. Like, Beatty's your third baseman next year, and Vientos is your DH. You can't even say Nimmo to be DH. Like, you can't do that. Like, you're not sitting Vientos when there's a righty on the mound. Like, you're gonna have to. So that's the issue. Like, if there was still no DH and Vientos wasn't playing well, and the DH is still a big hole, Nimmo can play DH every day, and we can put Ryan Clifford in left field next year if you want to. But you can't even do that anymore. So that's why I'm thinking, like, Nimmo's not going to be a big part of this team, in my opinion. Even if he's on this roster, like, he might have to fill the Starling Marte role. If the Mets don't want to give that 1-year deal to Starling Marte, you got to throw Nimmo on the bench and play him occasionally. One, to keep him healthy, and two, it's just not worth it. Like, Ryan Clifford is the beast. Like, they really like Ryan Clifford. Like, that's a big reason why they traded Drew Gilbert, because of Ryan Clifford's resurgence. So it's going to be very interesting. And I know we're getting to offseason talk here with 33 games to go, but the Mets just 3 days ago were a half a game up on the Reds, and now they're 2.5 games up on the Reds. I was never worried about the Reds, to be honest with you. I don't think they were very good. I just think the Mets played so bad that it looked like the Reds were better than they are. And they're not. Their best pitcher got rocked yesterday. One of their best pitchers got rocked yesterday in Arizona. So I don't trust them. I felt like and again, with all this losing, Chris, the Mets still haven't lost a playoff spot through all this. They was still got a playoff spot throughout all of this. And those are good signs, especially with them playing better. So I just wanted to ask you, in general, are you confident this team's going to make the playoffs with 33 games to go? I know it sounds a lot better when you take the series against the Braves and you're looking for a sweep. If I asked you 3 days ago, you probably might question it. But do you feel like this team is going to make the playoffs on August 24th?
Yeah, I really like, as close as the Reds have gotten to the Mets, even as far up as a half game back, I never, even through all the losing, I've never really felt like the Mets playoff spot is in jeopardy. Like, I've never felt like that. So it's good to see the Mets gain a couple games back on the Reds and just kind of hold them there. And hopefully, the Mets can make some noise against Philadelphia and kind of cut at that division lead. But because that's a huge series coming up. But I really do think that they need to take this game. But, if my confidence level, I'm not even lying. I'm not even trying to sound like a positive, optimistic Mets fan right now and have that kind of narrative, because like I've been making videos talking about this team's lack of urgency and how it's really concerning. I've never really felt like, yes, they've been in danger of losing that spot mathematically, but I've never really felt like this Reds team behind them is even a real threat. But I could be mistaken. I should knock on wood, because like it's baseball, anything can happen. But you just said it, you don't really believe in the Reds or any team that's behind the New York Mets right now. And I think that this is the Mets playoff spot to lose, clearly, and they just control their own destiny in terms of it. If the Mets aren't division winners, I'm going to be disappointed, but not overly disappointed, because wildcard teams have had a lot of success moving forward in the playoffs in recent memory, especially on the National League side. So get in the playoffs any way you can. I don't even care if it's the last spot. It'll be hard because you'll probably have to play a tough Padres team, if I'm not mistaken. That's how it's shaping out. So we saw the last go around against the Padres, back in 2022, didn't end so well. And historically, those pitchers, no matter what they're doing, that staff always has a beat on the Mets lineup. And I just never trust the Mets lineup against the Padres pitcher, but maybe things are different this year. Just get in, see what happens. But from a wild card perspective, I just have never felt like the Reds were truly going to overtake the Mets. So we'll see how it plays out in the end.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting. Again, I was always confident the Mets were going to make the playoffs. They never relinquished a playoff spot, and it's hard to say they're not making the playoffs. And there was a lot of people, all around that are saying this it's over during this tough stretch. Like, they're not going to make the playoffs. And it's like, you can't say that when they're still in the playoff spot. Like, that is not fair to them. They don't deserve a lot of credit, but it's not fair to them to say they're dead. Fire Mendoza, fire Stearns, get rid of this guy, get rid of that guy. And the team's still been in the playoffs. Somehow, some way, they found a way to continue keep a playoff spot through all of this. So this is a great sign, right? Maybe they're getting hot at the right time, because this team last year was so hot And eventually they fell apart in the NLCS because I think it was just the pitching and their innings just caught up to them. But maybe this is the time for them to get red hot. And that includes the offense, the pitching, figuring it out. And maybe we do go on a run. There's a lot of games to go before that. And we do got a tough September schedule. And obviously we still got to win today against the Braves because you don't want to backtrack over here. But this huge series against the Phillies before we really get over, the next 5 minutes or so in this game. This Philly series is huge because, again, Phillies lose today, we win today. We're 5 games out. And I said this a couple of days ago. If the Mets find their way for the 5 games going into that series, they're in a great spot because you can still have a chance to win this season series against them and a tiebreaker comes into play. And that's going to be huge, especially when you play them 7 more times. So, look. It is what it is at this point. You still got to take care of your business. You control your own destiny. I said the stars are aligning yesterday for the New York Mets, just based on Cincinnati not playing well. The Phillies with that big blow with Zach Wheeler not being here the rest of the year. That is a huge thing. That is a chance for the Mets to come back into this race and do some damage here. The stars are aligning. They got everything they need right in front of them. They just got to do it. So, with today's game with David Peterson on the mound, I mean, what's better than taking the first 2 and you got one of your best pitchers on the mound to sweep a series against Bryce Elder, who pitched well against the Mets last time out, but hasn't really had a good season, Chris. What are your thoughts about the pitching matchup and how you feel about the game today?
I mean, again, I really do think that this is we keep on saying this, like the National Series was a must-win series. They didn't do it. This one is a must-win series, maybe even a must-sweep series. I just think carrying momentum and potentially carrying momentum from a sweep rather than a series win would pay huge dividends for the Mets in an upcoming series against the Philadelphia Phillies, which has historically been just very even between those two teams, especially in recent memory between the Mets and the Phillies, right? The Phillies, they always play each other well. I mean, I always expect a good game between those two teams. So do I think that the Phillies are far and above a better team than the Mets? No. I mean, even with the Mets losing so much, the Mets can very easily beat the Phillies just as easily as the Phillies can beat the Mets. I really do think it's that even given the standings, whatever. I mean, the Phillies were able to pull away, I think 7 games at one point. Now it's 6. At one point, the Mets were winning. They were up a game and a half, 2 games. I mean, it's just, I don't know, that you never know what to expect with that. But talking about this pitching matchup right here, David Peterson's got to go out there and he's got to take care of business. I know he did so against the Nationals and the Mets needed that in the major way, especially from the rotation standpoint. But we know what happened the last time David Peterson went up against this Braves team. So go get it done. Let me put it this way. Maybe outside of like Nolan McLean for I guess what he's done the last 2 outings, there's nobody better that you would want to start this game than David Peterson. There's nobody that you'd rather want. So I'm very confident in him. But again, this Braves lineup can still put up runs in a hurry. Like we've seen that, especially at Citi Field, where they kind of shocked us, right? I mean, they came in and just took our lunch, so to speak. It was really embarrassing for the Mets to have that happen, especially in home field. But yeah, I like David Peterson today. And from a rotation standpoint, and I know we're talking about this game right now, but if the Mets were seriously considering moving a rotation starter to the bullpen, if that's a serious consideration for them, do you think Clay Holmes, besides Clay Holmes, because we already talked about that earlier this stream, between Senga and Manaea, do you think that's even a consideration for them between those two? And if so, who do you think that they would choose to go to the bullpen?
100% Manaea. Only because he looks good for the first 2 innings, and then he just can't do it anymore after the second time out. The reason why I wouldn't do Kodai Senga, because do we really trust him to be ready at any given moment for the bullpen? No. Like he probably needs a day off just to pitch on the bullpen day. Like it's not worth it. Like I think Kodai Senga is probably more beneficial in the rotation, only because I would trust Manaea coming out of the bullpen more, because he can give you 2 solid innings, because that's what he's been doing. He hasn't really had a stretch where he pitched 4 really good innings, and that's been the biggest problem with Manaea. The first 2 innings is lights out. he strikes out everybody in the first 2 innings. It's just the innings after that has been a problem. So I would say Manaea, and that's not a bad option either. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world. They did it with David Peterson last year. I know you're paying him $20+ million, but you got to win, and it doesn't matter how you do it. And if Manaea's got to go to the bullpen, he's a team player, right? He took less money to come back here, so I don't see him being, a pain in the ass about it. I think whatever the team needs to win, I think he will do it. So I would say Manaea over Senga. What about you?
I tend to agree. I mean, I tend to agree, and I do agree also with who is it that said this here? Joel. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, Senga would get like, if he's not comfortable pitching, right, every fifth day already, and it just seems like he has his routine about him, then I would be hard pressed to just find and see success from Senga out of the bullpen. So I do think that they would prioritize that. And I think that Manaea probably would be a little bit more willing to help the team out in that type of role. I don't think Manaea, but the problem for me is that I've seen more good, like better signs out of Manaea than I've seen from Kodai Senga. So that kind of argues against the point. But I mean, this bullpen is going to need a spark. And I think that Manaea would be the best option there between those two names. Am I confident that either of those two names move to the bullpen? Maybe not, but I could just see David Stearns and the Mets prioritizing Manaea in the bullpen. But, we forget about Manaea too. I know that he's kind of lost some steam around the fourth and fifth innings as of recent. I mean, ever since really he's been pitching in the second half. But that Pete Alonso play at first base in the National Series just really took all the life out of his start too. Yeah. So you have to take that into consideration, but I do agree with you. I think Manaea would be the better bet there.
Yeah, and as we get close to finishing up this stream, again, today starts the first day with all of these pitchers pitching on regular rest. The first time this year, David Peterson, 8 innings against the Nationals, now pitching on regular rest. He hasn't done that for probably since the beginning of the year. And the last time he did that was about 2 weeks, about a week and a half ago, where he got rocked and not pitched well in that regular day's rest after pitching really well his last time out. So we'll see if David Peterson can continue to be really good on regular, or at least this time on regular rest. And this is a big test, not just because we got to sweep the Braves here, but with the Phillies and the Marlins coming up at home, well, a lot of these guys are pitching on normal days rest, as we started the show talking about. This is a big test, not just because of the teams we're facing, but can they do it? Because this is a big test for them, considering that they're going to pitch on regular rest in the postseason. There's no way around that. So just like they tested Holmes yesterday and pushing him 6-7 innings, they got to push these starters because they don't have any other choice anymore. And it's going to be very interesting to see if they can all handle that. We all know Kodai Senga never pitches on normal rest, but a lot of these guys haven't done it either in a while, and it's going to be a big test for them, Chris. So, any final thoughts before we call it a show?
No final thoughts. I know you're doing the post game. I'm going to try my best to make it. No promises. I do got to run some Sunday errands, unfortunately, but this is a very, very important game, man. I can't overstate or emphasize that enough. You need to go back home to see Philly riding high. And I know that a series win theoretically does that, but how much better of a feeling would it be to get the sweep? So go out there, get it done. Want to see some good stuff from David Peterson. And for the offense, like I said, I've been saying it over the past couple of weeks, when they really started to turn it on, I'm not concerned about the offense moving forward. They're finally performing up to expectations and putting up runs in bunches. I mean, 6 home runs. I've never seen, if in a long time, maybe ever since 2024, right? I've never seen the Mets offense be this aggressive and have this much success, right? And I'm not talking about like sparse success. I'm talking about guys stacking hits together, like home runs together. And I'm not talking about individual performances. I'm talking about as a team. Like, they're aggressive and they're not waiting and looking for walks anymore. I think at some point we reached a point in this season with the offense that they were looking for walks, just any way to get on base rather than being aggressive and putting a ball in the gap or over the fence. Now we're starting to see that. The recipe for success is still, and the emphasis should be on the starting rotation trying to figure things out. And Reinforcements will be on the way, whether in the bullpen or the starting rotation, whether the Mets have to shake things up and move a rotation arm to the bullpen to make some room in the rotation. Whatever has to happen, I think this team will do it. I think this team will get to the playoffs. There's a long way ahead. There's over 30 games. I understand, but I'm starting to see glimpses, Rob. I'm starting to see some good signs. Like, we're not there yet. We're not to where we want to be at just yet. And we'll know after the Phillies series if it's possible or not. But the signs are starting to be there. Again, I'll knock on wood to not jinx it, but go out there, win this game. And hopefully, whether it's just Rob or Rob and myself for the post game, we will be amped up for a series sweep. That's what we're hoping for in the post game. So let's go Mets.
Yeah, they're finally not relying on hope and actually using their sense of urgency and getting better players in here internally to do the job. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channels and on X. And make sure you tune into the post game after the show. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channels, guys. And I'll see you later on the post game show, hopefully talking about a sweep of the Atlanta Braves and going back home for 7 games. Have a good day, guys. Enjoy the game, and let's go Mets.
Go Mets.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the